This episode of the EDM Prodcast is brought to you by EDM Foundations. If you're a new producer and you're stuck with tutorials and you're not sure where to go, EDM Foundations might be the answer. We've had over 4,800 producers join and level up their foundational skills by practically making 4 pro-level tracks rather than learning a bunch of theory and concept. So if you want to stop wasting time and nail your music, head to edmprod.com/EDM-foundations. That's edmprod.com/EDM-foundations. Welcome everybody to the EDM Prodcast. This is a show where we interview artists, producers, and basically anybody who has something to say in the world of electronic music. My name is Aden Russell, aka Artsea. I'm your host, and today we are joined by Christian, aka the TheFatRat. How's it going, man?
Going fantastic, thanks.
Awesome, man. And so just a brief little intro for those of you out there who aren't familiar with TheFatRat. So you're, I would say, a multi-genre electronic music producer from Germany. You're known for your unique approach to releasing, where you often lift copyright restrictions on your music, allowing them to be used on platforms like YouTube without those restrictions and much more. And as a result, you've, abounded in streams, I would say, and plays on YouTube, and you've got quite a loyal following. You know, you've got millions, if not billions, of streams on Spotify, I think now. It's gotten up pretty high, and you've gotten sync deals with games like Dota 2 and Rocket League. So that's the little brief intro to you, man. But yeah, you've obviously had quite a long career, I'd say, as well, over the last few years. It's grown pretty consistently. But I'd love to hear from your perspective, like your background in music, how you got into this whole thing in the first place, and then we can, kind of unpack that.
Yeah, so originally I wanted to become a music producer, just producing other artists. So it wasn't about me as an artist at all. And so I grew up making music. So in general, music has always been like my thing. But at some point I was kind of frustrated with the music industry. I was in Los Angeles for 3 years, produced all sorts of artists. I was producing some K-pop. I was working with Lupe Fiasco, for example, on his album, which went #1 on Billboard hip-hop charts.
Wow.
Was even nominated for a Grammy. A lot of different things. Wow. Still, in Los Angeles, I was kind of frustrated because some of the best songs I made at that time were never released. And some songs that were not so good were released simply because they were made with the right people. And the other thing was that a lot of people talked into my music production. I mean, of course, you have the artist where you work with. But then you have an A&R, and you have another A&R, and then you have the management, and then you have the president, and you have the publisher, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody wants you to change stuff. And sometimes I had songs that were great at the beginning, but not so good in the end. And at some point, my wife was actually telling me, Chris, you should be the artist. You should make the decisions, and you should self-release. Yeah, that's how it started. And that's where I'm coming from. But I was like a music producer for 10 years before.
Wow. So you've come from, the opposite world. Because I think a lot of, producers maybe start with like producing for themselves and then go in the other way to kind of producing for other artists. But you've come from that world and kind of frustrated with the way it works, decided, you know what, I'm going to make my own music and just do it that way. That's super interesting. So you're obviously from Germany originally, and you were over in LA for a little while. Was that at the same time? Did you like move back, or what happened in terms of like when you decided to focus on your own stuff?
No, first it was like a side project. Because you cannot plan a career. I mean, some people probably can. I'm not able to like plan a music career. I was just, the only thing I was good at was simply, making music, and that was it. So I just put out stuff on SoundCloud. I made an EP, I put it on SoundCloud, and it didn't blew up right away. But what happened is that a band and another artist and a management reached out to me, say like, "Hey, this is amazing. We should work together." So I made another So I made a remix for a band from New York called The Knox. They're really great guys, by the way. Definitely check them out. And that went #9, I think, on Hype Machine back then, which was a huge thing. And then I had a remix
Yeah,
request from Faster the People. And I made a remix for them,
wow.
which I ended up releasing as a bootleg remix, but it hit number 1 on Hype Machine. Then I made a bootleg remix 2 weeks later for Avicii's Levels back then, which 2012.
Yeah.
Okay. And it also hit number 1 on Hype Machine. So that's how it started. So then the momentum started growing. And in that year, 2012, I had 10 top 10 on Hype Machine remixes in a row. So not a single remix failed to hit the top 10 on Hype Machine. So then I was like, okay, cool. This might be an alternative. But then I wanted to move back, like for family reasons, to Göttingen, which is a small town in the middle of Germany. And then I honestly didn't really know what to do there. But I started to, give originals a shot and just say, okay, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And then I also cut off all connections that I had. I cut off my connections to the management, to the publisher I was completely alone in the in a small village in Germany, and simply put out original songs. And I was simply lucky that they blew up like crazy. The first that really blew up was Unity, which has like over 200 million plays now. And then Windfall was next, and Xenogenesis once again hit number 1 on Hype Machine. Yeah, that's when my own artist career really took off. And then I also completely stopped producing for other people at that time.
Wow. Okay. So it was more of a slow transition, in terms of like, making it your career. I would say like, yeah, you kind of were still doing that a little bit, and then once it was kind of more, gaining momentum, is that kind of when you went all in with TheFatRat?
Yeah, exactly. And it was a conflict at times, especially in the LA time, because I had business partners, I had people I was working with. Everybody was like, hey, you should do this. I was like, no, I want to do my own thing. And some people were pretty mad at me. But yeah, at some points sometimes you just have to make important decisions.
Totally. That's actually something interesting to dive into, because, I mean, maybe not in the exact same situation as you, but I think a lot of people listening to this maybe, have another, job or a career in something else, and they want to kind of pursue an artist career of their own. But like, obviously there's a lot of factors to consider before you dive straight into something like that, very competitive, etc. So like, yeah, like, what was it like overcoming those, I guess, things that you already had in place? Because I think, a lot of people would gain a lot to hear from your perspective on that.
I think it needs some courage. At some point, you have to bring up the courage and say, okay, I'm just going to go all in. Which I literally did when I was in Germany. I remember I had a request I decided, okay, I'm going to do TheFatRat now. I just fully going to focus on that. And then 2 weeks later, I had a request, hey, I could produce a big name artist from Germany. And it would take about a month. I would get around 10K payment for it, which by then was really good money for me and would really made me feel safe. And I said no. And I think that was one of the important steps, because at some point you have to say, okay, I'm just going to take the leap,
Say no, even if it feels good in the moment, to have that extra boost, but then focus on what's better for you long term. That's good.
Simply try make it that failure is acceptable, maybe. So I was like, okay, I said at that time, okay, I'm going to give myself 1 year. I had enough monies that I could say, okay, even if nothing works within 1 year, then I'll find something else. So failure was an option, which took the pressure from me. And sometimes I think when you go for a music career, you realize, if you really think about it, that even if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. So sometimes when you really feel like it, maybe just go in and say, okay, I give myself a limited amount of time. I'm just going to go all in. And then if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and then I'm going to look for something else. And I, by the way, did this when I started as a producer. I gave myself a 7-year time frame. I remember I was 23 years old by that time. I said, okay, if by 35, when I'm 35 years, what am I saying? No, No, I was 27 years old already. That was it.
Oh,
I
okay.
said if I'm 35 years old and I still cannot make a living from music, then I'm going to do something else.
Yeah. That's cool. I think definitely, yeah, taking the pressure off and allowing yourself to fail is key. I had the experience where I put too much pressure on myself, and all it does is like not help you actually achieve those things
Yeah,
anyway. Like it just makes you more like, anxious or frustrated because it's like you want things to happen your way, but it doesn't happen. But yeah, if you allow things, I mean, because really, like, there's so many, as you mentioned previously, like factors that go into whether your song is going to blow up or not, and you can't really control all of them all the time, really. So it is good to like allow there to be room for error. I think is, yeah, absolutely
yeah,
crucial when you're growing your
and
career.
super boring advice: save money. But it's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
for me, it's been so important.
yeah,
Simply that if you say, okay, something's not working, you know your plans are not working out, that you're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go try it again. And I know some people who thought it would be a good idea to keep the pressure up, so they would make a lot of money, they would spend all the money, so they think it keeps them
right.
going. But once something doesn't work, then you're so stressed out and completely kind of destroys you, can get you really fast. I'm very conservative about money, and that makes life easier.
Totally. Oh yeah, I'd 100% agree. Like having a safety net, like being a bit wise with like when you do it. Like if you're broke and you're leaving your job, maybe save up a bit first before you do it, and then give yourself that time so you're not pressured to immediately go back to it. So yeah, I 100% stand behind that
Yeah,
as well.
and also when you have some success, then it's great time to build,
Yeah.
some or to save some money. As soon as you have success, start saving as not as much as you can, but a really decent amount of money, because then you can be laid back when some stuff doesn't work. You're like, okay, cool, no problem. Let's just keep going.
Mhm. Yeah, and I won't talk about it for too long because I feel like it's a topic that everyone's talked about a lot in the last 2 years. But like I think COVID is a great example of that. With if you're an artist, maybe who is more reliant on shows for income. I mean, obviously, if I mean, I imagine a lot of your income does come from the streaming world as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, if you do have that, other thing, like those times are great to have a bit of a buffer room as well, I'd imagine. So, um, yeah, I think that's a great example of something that can happen that disrupts the music
Yes.
industry. So, yeah, um, that's awesome, man. Well, no, appreciate those thoughts. Want to switch it up a bit, and yeah, I guess as I mentioned in the intro, you're an artist who's very much known for your unique approach to like, yeah, copyright lifting and like making your music available to be used in video content or other things like that without that monetization factor impacting other people. And I think this is a path very few have taken, especially at the scale I think you've done it at. And I'm curious to ask first, why did you decide to do that early on? Like, what was the initial spark that made you like, all right, I'm gonna not go down this route of just monetizing everything and trying to squeeze everything out of every song I release, but actually make it openly available? Like, why did you decide to do that?
The main reason when I started fully doing TheFatRat for me
Mm,
was simply that I enjoy making music so much and that I really wanted to
yeah.
share it. So cutting off all those relationships to publishers and labels and managements was so liberating. And it felt
Mm,
almost like an rebellion and a liberation to me to say, you know what? Now I can give my music to everybody, right? Because before it was
mm,
everybody was like, hey, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. You have to, everybody was like cutting into it and then also protecting
yeah.
it. And I had such weird experiences. For example, I made an official remix for Chris Brown. And this was a
Mm,
time when my music blew up on music blogs. I made this official remix. I never heard when the release date would be. And at some point, some people contacted me. Hey, I heard your song on this blog. Where can I get it? And it was like, oh, it's out. Interesting. And I did some research
mm.
and I found out it was released in the UK, but not in the rest of the
Ah,
world on iTunes. So, and
wow,
then
that's
blogs
weird.
started
Yeah.
writing about it and people wanted to get it. But they couldn't because for some reason the record label decided it's a good idea to start releasing in some countries and not in the rest of the world. And
Yeah.
I had a couple of those experiences. It was so annoying. I was like, people want to listen to the music. Okay, I made this music. I made
Yeah.
music so people can listen to it. So let them. Okay. So
That
yeah,
is,
that was
yeah.
so liberating when I was okay, it's my music. I'm just going to put it up by myself. And you know what? Everybody can copy it. Everybody can share it. Everybody can remix it. I also put out the stems. And yeah, it was very much a artistic freedom, if you will. So that was
Yeah.
one
Wow.
reason. And also the other reason, like for example on YouTube back then, you could, if you could, I think you could only claim the entire video, right? So
Yeah, I
somebody
think
would
so.
make a
Yeah.
video 10 minutes and use my music 20 seconds as background music in the intro, and then I would come along and say, okay, thank you, that entire video now belongs to me. That didn't make any sense to me.
Mm.
So then people were asking me, why are you not claiming the video? And I would answer like, why would I claim the video? Like, because someone uses 20 seconds of my music. Yeah, so
Yeah.
those were a couple of reasons where it really wasn't an option for me. Like, well, that's totally, I enjoyed, and it would be totally weird for me to go around and claim everything just because people used some music as background music.
Yeah, because that was the era when it really kind of came in, and the whole content ID system was, cracking down on, people using songs
Yeah.
in YouTube. And I think it was a bit of a frustrating time, um, especially for like, channels or whatever who just, were making, whether it video game content or whatever, and just, wanted to use their favorite song in the background. But then it's like the whole video gets, it's not only demonetized if they're running ads, but also just like taken down completely, which is a frustrating thing. I mean, it's a frustrating thing for like even myself as a DJ still to this day. It's like if I'm just like doing a fun DJ mix, for my fans, kind of like, spreading the songs around and promoting them, giving them almost, I guess you could say, free promotion. That's not necessarily the point. It's like still that video gets like claimed, and while it's like a percentage now, I think it's still like annoying because your whole thing gets muted or whatever. So there is definitely a pain point there, and I think you kind of flipped that around and kind of made it work to your advantage instead of frustrating lots of people. So it's really cool.
Yeah, what's important for me is that I'm not against copyright by any means. I think it's really
Yeah.
important. And for a long
Yeah.
time, I mean, I saw studios going bankrupt because of all the music piracy in the early 2000s. And
Wow.
people were like, yeah, this is like freedom and it's against the content mafia and weird stuff like that. Where I was like, no, it's
Yeah.
people are working to make the music and they deserve to be paid for it. But
Sure.
now, about 10 years later, the entire thing flipped the other way around. That
Yeah.
now record labels had the means to, claim everything, and they went totally overboard with that again. And I had offers from companies that told me they wanted to pay me like huge advantage, like $500,000 advance or so, if only they would get to claim my videos on YouTube. And they promised me to like make me even way more money, because they have this amazing claiming tool and stuff. And yeah, today you see what those tools do. Like some people, they just talk about a song and their entire video gets claimed. Which,
That's crazy.
crazy
Or like
things that happen.
sing a song with like their mouth or whatever, and it's like
like 5 notes and your video's blocked and you get a strike, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is, man. That's interesting. Yeah, because it's like copyright is obviously, I totally agree with you. It's not a bad thing. It's just like, how is it exploited? And like,
Yeah.
Where does it become unhelpful to like, people who are, a lot of cases even using the song fairly, like by, even legal standards, I think. But just because the system is acting that way, it does become frustrating. So it definitely is like a balancing act. Like, how do you, allow people to make the money they deserve to make without, restricting the freedom of like people just wanting to use your song in a pretty fair way. So it is definitely, I think it's an ongoing battle as well, because
yes,
it happens on pretty much every platform now, not just YouTube and stuff. It's like Facebook,
and it will
Instagram,
always be. Yeah, it will always
Yeah.
be because technology is evolving,
Yep.
copyrights are evolving. Also, with like what counts as stealing somebody's song, for example, I think it gets really way more problematic because the
Yeah.
laws, they're like decades old. When you had like a couple of writers in a country, and that was pretty much it. Now you have, I
Yep.
think, over 80,000 songs per day released on Spotify alone. You have like 12
Yeah.
notes. So it's pretty, it can happen very easily that that you use a small phrase or something that somebody else has used before.
Yes.
So those things as well. I think that there are also some problems on the horizon with that as well, because with so many people releasing so much music and everything's connected and everybody knows each other's songs or can hear them. You never know if somebody on the other end of the world, probably 5 years ago, one of the millions and millions and millions of songs were released, used that same melody snippet.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I saw some video the other day where it was like splice A&R issues or something, where some
Oh yeah.
record label owner some record label owner got two demos that used the exact same like splice vocal sample, like pretty much unedited, like just top line
Yeah.
thrown in over the top sort of thing. And it was like how many songs are getting released where it's like just that, like, I mean, whilst I feel like people are in their right to do that, it is royalty-free samples and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, that's going to become an issue when this person says, but this sounds like my song, but it's my song. It's like, well, it's neither
Yeah,
of it.
see, you get copyright claims.
Yeah.
We had that before on my label, the Arcadium. I don't use like splice samples, put them like the entire vocal melody in right away. But some people did it.
Yeah.
At the beginning, we didn't ask, right? We were, oh, this is a nice song, great production, let's put it out there. And boom, we got a copyright claim on our video. And we were like, for people, you can use it for free. And those people got a copyright claim as well. And we were like, oh, what happened? Noticing, okay, there's a vocal splice sample in it, and somebody else used it, put that one into a copyright claim system, and yeah, now you're getting claims on that, and then you have to figure it out. But at least now I know the head of content ID at YouTube personally, so
Oh, good.
it's
like
really cool.
Him or her a text message, yeah.
Kinda, yeah. And it's, I have to say, they really do what they can to solve those problems. They're in between. I mean, they don't really care, and they kind of really care. They don't have an advantage from either side. They just try to make it as good as possible. But talking to him and everything, I see how difficult that is, because put yourself into the other, like into the seat of the person where the copyright gets infringed, right? Your song gets used on somewhere else, and somebody's not, simply sampling your entire song that you wrote, and so now you need a system, to protect your copyright.
Yeah.
So you
totally
right, but then on the other hand, you use something fairly, and then you get false claims. So yeah, they're always in between. So it's really difficult to do.
It's definitely going to be a ongoing evolution to that landscape. I think it'll be definitely interesting to see how it evolves in the next 5 to 10 years for sure. Yeah, that's cool, man. Switching it up again, another thing I really like about your music, obviously you're quite inspired by like video games and stuff like that. Like, are you a gamer yourself? Like, is that a world you've come from?
Yes, especially come from. So especially as a child, I was a crazy gamer. I like NES, Master System, Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Genesis, or Mega Drive, as we call it in Germany, and so on and so forth. I even had a Neo Geo in the 90s. So I was like really crazy gamer. These days I don't game that much anymore, simply because of time reasons. But I still, mostly with my daughter these days, just already played some Mario Kart this morning.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, gotta pass those classic games down, I think. There's like something special about some of those games. Yeah. Yeah, I was like a Super Nintendo guy growing up. I was like a little younger. I got my Super Nintendo passed down to me by my cousins who were a bit older, and then Nintendo 64 and that kind of thing. So I definitely come from a little bit of that world as well. But I can definitely hear the influence, which is really cool. One thing I really appreciate about your music as well is like you take that into the context of like electronic music, and it's unashamedly like a lot, like across a lot of your music, I would say it's unashamedly like positive, like, and it just feels nice to listen to. I don't know, like I feel like a lot of people in the world of electronic music are trying to be very serious all the time with the way they write music, their approach to the production and songwriting. You know, everyone loves minor keys, and not that minor keys are bad or anything. You know,
Yeah.
I think we all
No,
write
no,
in
I
minor
get what you
keys.
mean.
Yeah, I feel like you just have an unashamed approach to the happiness in your music, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
like
sure.
intentional as well?
I find it hard to take anything too serious. You know,
Yeah.
and I find it so weird when people take themselves serious and think it's cool, because I totally think it's not.
Yeah.
Right? You're just
Right.
a stupid human being. We all know so little about this world. We have such small, like we're just getting pushed around by randomness and luck, you know, through our lives. And a few decades later, we are dead. And then we run around
Yeah.
like we know everything and we are so cool, we're so awesome. I think it's maybe it's also a little bit a matter of age, because I'm 42 and
Sure.
you get a little different perspective when you get older. You're like, how you realize more about how ridiculous everything is. And the more you get, also the more I got, like, for example, in the music industry and into industries and in general, and looking behind the scenes and stuff, you realize how chaotic everything is.
Yeah.
So I just cannot take myself too serious, and I cannot take anything else too serious. So I think it comes a little bit from that. I could not take myself like literally serious, like it's
Yeah.
means so much what I'm doing because I'm this grandiose artist. It's so stupid. And especially
Sure.
some artists that passed the test of time, they were just sitting there and, you know, and doing their job, like Bach or Mozart or those guys. They were like, oh, I'm this genius artist. They were very common men, you know, and they just try to make good music. So that's what I do. And then those happy songs, they just happen. I don't plan them. So I just sit down, I make songs, and sometimes I try to make a cool trap beat. For example, my song Windfall that started as a trap song. And it's like super happy and playful and stuff. And then, you know, I play around with it, and sometimes I just have to smile like, well, this is totally not what I intended. But I have to smile all the time, and like I want to jump up and dance. So yeah, maybe somebody else will like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. No, I think you're right. Like, it definitely is important not to take it too seriously. I was gonna say,
I mean, everybody can take themselves serious, but I personally find it ridiculous.
Yeah, sure. I feel like a level of I feel like a level of detachment. I don't know if this is something you find as well, but like once the music's out there as well, like I mean, this is what I do. I don't know if it's the same for you. I like try and kind of have a level of detachment with the music because, you know, when I was a newer producer, I was a lot younger. I would kind of just put music out there and people would be like, oh, I don't like this or whatever. It's like, and I would take so much of that on board personally as like a personal attack. But now it's kind of like, if my music's out there, it's like, I like it, sure. And it represents what I like, and it's my sound and it's personal. Yeah. But at the same time, if someone says something about it, I'm kind of like, whatever, like I'm not going to take that as like my value, you know? I don't know if you find the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think this, like, taking yourself too serious is a way into, you know, this mental health problems like depression and anxiety and all those things. You know, I said, we're going to die anyway. Death it's also funny because as playful as my songs may be, like in the lyrics, death is a recurring thing. And I think death is very liberating because, you know, we're going to die. So why take it too serious? It's going to be over very soon and nobody will care. It's just going to be dust, and future generations are just going to...
It's so funny. I was literally like trying to like sort out my life insurance today. And then I was like, It's so funny that you mentioned this. And I was talking to my wife before I record this. I'm like, oh, whatever, who cares? Like, I'm not even gonna get that. You're not even gonna get that much if I die. Like, whatever. Like, it was so funny because they like don't even give you that much for like
Yeah.
my age when you die. It's like, what's the point? It's just funny that you're mentioning that now, and I'm like, yeah, it's true. Like, it is a perspective. Honestly, though, it's a perspective realigner because it's like, you know, it's like you can't control that. It's inevitable, and I think it can completely change your approach to something like music production, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy this. I'm going to make the most of it while I have the chance, rather than freaking out about every play or freaking out about every, did I get this much money on this release, or did I get what I wanted from this release? It's like, whatever, you just kind of do it and enjoy the ride.
And there's this very interesting cognitive bias. I love studying cognitive biases, and one is that we always think way too much that people notice us. So there's those experiments like you put people in a group with a T-shirt and it says like some weird stuff on it, like some offensive text or something, and then you put them in the group and then you let them guess how much people noticed that text, and then you ask everybody else who noticed the text, and you see a huge difference. So when you're wearing the T-shirt, you think everybody thinks something about you, but actually everybody's mostly busy thinking about themselves. And I think this is a part of it too. So we take it, also the music. And what was really weird for me, the more I think like that I think actually nobody really cares about my music, because even if you like have like big fan base, you have like, millions of listeners, and I have like a couple million streams every day. It's just, I always think of it that if I would take the song down, there would probably be a handful of people who would bother about it. The other was, oh, the song's missing. Okay, so I'm just gonna put something else there. So it's not that it's not that important, but what I find weird is the more I think about that, the more people actually take my music serious. Right. So it's so it probably even helps getting forward in that sense.
100%,
and also what I think is,
it is,
we think about these big achievements, but they also very forgotten very soon. I think the biggest thing you could reach as a musician is probably that 100 years from now, people in school will be bored with your music, because people you have to study the music that was like 100 years ago. Here's TheFatRat. Everybody will be like, oh no, I want to listen to whatever's new now. So this is the biggest thing you can reach in your life. So awesome. So, so.
Yeah, it's like, that's so true. Even I feel like it happens even with like even a generation ago, like, when your parents, like, I love 80s music, for example, because I was born in the 90s, but my parents played a lot of 70s and 80s music, and I was just like, okay, like, whatever, like, it's cool, but like, I kind of want to listen to this artist that like has just put a song out, yesterday or whatever, when I was especially when I was young. So yeah, I think that's true. Like, there is definitely, it's not like, I think it's that thing of fame doesn't always equal like, a positive response. You can be like really famous and then people are like, oh, whatever, like annoyed with you. So it's exactly all funny at the
and then also the fame will be gone at some point, It's all going to be lost.
No, it's so true. I think definitely death is a perspective realigner for sure, man. I love that. I love it when we get into these topics which are like, not really related to music, but they definitely apply to it, like especially people who wanting to make music and put it out and stuff like that. So
I think it's for me, it's like the most important, those are the most important things. So it's because that's everything builds on those fundamental philosophical thoughts where like, okay, this is what I actually want in life, this is why I'm doing it. And when you have that clear for yourself, then everything else builds on it.
Yeah. Makes me wonder like how many artists out there actually would have chosen to be artists if they had answered those kind of questions or thought about those things enough. Because I'm like, I'd imagine there'd be a lot of artists who probably were like, oh, I'm just doing this because the lifestyle or the fame or something. And it's like, some people would say and argue against me, people are like entitled to pursue whatever they want. And sure, like there's a degree of truth to that, but I feel like, you know, at the same time, there's a degree of like what actually matters to you. Is it a good motive? And then maybe if it's not, then try and find something else that actually aligns with what you like. Because I do wonder that sometimes. So yeah, it's a definitely a rabbit hole topic for me as well. That's good, man. Wanting to go back to your music for a bit as well. One thing I wanted to ask is, with your releases, so you kind of alluded to this earlier, you have your own label that you release through now, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. The Arcadium.
And how long have you the Arcadium. Yeah, awesome. And how long have you been doing that for now? Like, because I've noticed you released through another label for a lot of your singles a while back and stuff like that. So yeah, do you want to dive into
how you changed the name of the label? Okay. I started self-releasing my originals in 2013. So it's been a while. But back then I didn't put stuff on Spotify and Apple Music. I just put it on YouTube. So I don't know if it should be called a label. And then but 2013, 2015 was then in spring 2015 I also started putting my stuff on Apple Music and Spotify through TuneCore.
Right. Yeah.
If you want to call that a label, yes, that's
it
was a slow transition from owning a SoundCloud channel to having a full label with accounting and everything. It just was slow transition.
Yeah, nice. Was that like one of those things as well, kind of tied in with like the, you know, I guess you could call it rebellion against like the traditional way of, you know, releasing with the copyright side of things as well? Was the decision to self-release around that time as well part of that, like coming from the background of working with producers and artists and A&Rs and that kind of world? Was that tied in with that?
Yeah, self-releasing definitely. That was definitely a thing where and also one thing I really noticed, I also had a huge hit in France in 2010, and I know somebody who had another worldwide smash, and I realized that when artists really blow up, it's usually the music. It's just the music. It's not so much the label work and not so much the promotion, and all those things are very limited. I saw so much stuff that was promoted really well, which was a huge priority. It just didn't work. And I saw so much stuff that blew up massively with no promotion at all. So one thing I said to myself, okay, if I ever have a song that blows up, it would be perfect. It would just be me as an artist, and on my label, nobody else would be involved. So then I would like own everything, which is exactly what happens. And money-wise, it makes a huge difference. For example, when you have all those songs and I own them 100%, and even a lot of songs are even written 100% by me, and there's nobody else involved in the entire thing, because I had songs that were released with my business partner back then in LA, and then we had another production team as well to get to the artist. The artist wrote, we had top liners. I ended up, while I produced big parts of the track, I ended up owning like 2.5% on the writing of the track. Wow. Just because, it was so many people involved, and then it's okay. Big name top liner takes 50%, right?
Yeah.
Artist takes another 25%. And then you have have 4 producers taking splitting of the other 25%, and then you have your publisher as well, and so on and so forth. And you end up with like such small percentages. And then the songs even don't perform that well. They're like released through a major, but they're like doing okay. And you're making like, small money.
Yeah, that is crazy. I suppose in that world as well, with a major label, I mean, probably more for the top line artists and stuff, is like, I don't know if this is something you experienced as the producer, but like the whole other thing of advances, it's like you're getting like a 2.5%, royalty rate or whatever, plus sometimes even paying back money you got given at the start before you even start to make that back. So, I mean, I don't know if that's how you worked a lot of the time, or if it was just a flat rate kind of for you, but that's another thing to consider. for those.
Yeah,
that world.
sometimes I got like advances for the production as well. But
sure.
those advances, in my opinion, advances are really convenient for managers. So people who manage artists, people who manage
Yes.
producers, because the money comes in late, right? You produce the song, then you place it, and then it takes time until it's released, and then it takes even longer until the money comes to the record label, and it takes even longer until the money finally reaches the people who actually made the music, which is okay, but it's annoying for a manager because the manager has they have contracts and they run out after 2 years, and they're probably just 9 months left within the contract, and you don't know if the producer's gonna keep working with you. But okay, if I just place the song there, then the money will come in a year, and I'm never going to see a single cent from that. So for managers, especially for managers, advances are really convenient. But you have, from that perspective, you also have to be really careful with your managers. Because advances are really attractive, especially when you are an artist. Because what can work, I'm not saying every manager is like, there are like huge differences in managers, there are huge differences in record labels. But what I seen happen is incredibly shitty record deals, but they get signed because they pay big advances. Right.
Yeah.
And for the management, it's very convenient because they get a lot of money, and then they have a record label where whenever problems arise, they can send the artist to the record label. That, okay, cool, your label's going to take care of that. But then 5 years later, the artist is still stuck with the label deal and can do nothing. So you got to be really careful with that. As an artist, you have to check your agreements yourself, because some managements make agreements that are beneficial for them, which is a huge advance, and they do not care so much about what's going to happen in a couple of years for you as an artist.
That's a very good point. Yeah, considering the ulterior motives of the others around you sometimes. Because artists definitely feel like the cliche is that they don't stand up for themselves in those environments because they don't feel qualified to. But it definitely helps to have a little bit of confidence and be like, no, ask the question in a polite way, at least, be like, actually, why can't we do this? And maybe just a negotiation is what needs to happen, and you can figure something out there. But I run a record label, an independent one, and a guy came up to me. We're releasing his tune on a compilation. We do 50-50 with all of our artists, just for the master, and we don't take publishing. And he was like, "Oh, can we do something else?" And we had that negotiation, but it was like, he was very polite about it. Whereas, I've worked with, actually, I haven't really worked with other people, but I've heard other people who've had horror stories of just people who've been notoriously difficult to work with. So you don't want to be that artist who's always trying to be a frustration to other people, but you also just do want to stand up for yourself. So, it definitely pays to have that bit of confidence, I think.
Yeah, you should understand what everything means. That's even more important, and understand the long-term consequences of everything you're signing.
Yeah, exactly. What does it mean to own if they own the lifetime copyright of the song?
Exactly.
Is that good? Is that bad in this situation? Because it could be either, depending on the agreement. So asking those questions is definitely important. So it's definitely whether you're and I would actually like to ask your thoughts on this, because you obviously do a lot of self-releasing. Do you think for artists out there who are kind of wanting to grow, do you think that they should just self-release everything, or do you think there is a time and place to work with a label, external label?
I think especially when you're starting, it makes a lot of sense to release with an indie label.
Yeah,
simply
indie labels.
Because you're starting at zero, right? And it's difficult to get the initial exposure. And still later, I mean, 2 years ago, I still released with Monster Cat, for example, and it's great. It's just personally awesome to have a team around you, an established team in a community, which I very much enjoyed with Monster Cat. So this is it's just a human aspect. It can feel kind of lonely when you do everything by yourself.
For
Yeah,
sure.
but also business-wise, in the beginning, definitely makes sense. And I even think there are moments where it makes sense to work with a major label for some
Okay.
artists.
Yep.
For me personally, the best example is Bella Poarch, right?
Yep.
Famous, TikTok famous, but not
Yep.
really a musician. And I
Yep.
think what the major label did with her was genius. They
Sure.
found the right song for her. They made sure everything
Yep.
was produced properly. They put up together a marketing campaign and everything. I don't think she could have done anything like that herself, or a indie label could have pulled that off. That's a typical
Yes.
thing where even major label makes sense. So yeah, you have to know about it. But the more
Yep.
you're established as an artist, and the more you have your own following, the more you're blowing up already, the less sense it makes to sign with a label. So what really doesn't make sense, if you have a song and it blows up like crazy, to give it to a label. Don't do it. Seriously, don't do it, because you'll have all the labels coming after you, and sometimes it happens before you even see the first money. And I heard stories about this. So like, song blows up, makes like 500,000 plays on Spotify every day, right? And then you have the vultures coming in, and everybody's like trying to get a big piece of the cake as fast as possible, and they're going to throw advances at you. And you'll
Yeah.
probably have a management that thinks like, wow, 1 million advance, that's 200K for me, amazing, let's do it. And then the label takes 80% of your song, and in the end you lose like 4 million or whatever it might be over the next couple of years. And you're
Yeah. For
probably
sure.
tied in a long-term agreement where they even have options. They're like, okay, they have an option for 3 other songs, or they even have an album option, which means if they say, they take the song, they say, okay, no, you have to produce an album for your advance. Yeah, we already paid you 1 million. And you're
Yeah.
stuck in the
Yeah.
deal. And I knew a lot of artists that were stuck in major label deals, and all they wanted is to get out of the deal. Sometimes they
Yeah.
even had to pay for it to
Yeah.
be able to self-release their own songs again.
And it can happen with some of the bigger independents too. I've
Yes.
heard similar stories, like especially the big names in a certain genre or whatever can sometimes be like that. So it's just something to, generally speaking, if you're working with a label, to definitely keep an eye on. For sure, man.
What I think makes sense is when you're, like I said, when you're starting, especially with unreleased songs. That's a different situation, right? Where you're starting or you're small, your song's unreleased, do a track by track deal with the label. There's not so much you can do wrong in that case. So that's definitely something to consider.
For sure, man. Yeah. And wanted to also talk about your production side of things too, and your process, especially with your new album, Parallax, came out this year, correct?
Yeah.
That was this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, and everyone can go check that out. The link for that will be in the show notes for this episode. I would love to hear your production process behind that album. There was a few collaborations on there as well. What was the overall experience like making that?
It's chaotic as usual.
Yeah.
For me, creativity is very chaotic. I usually just follow my. Well, if I wanted to phrase it friendly, I would say I follow my intuition. Maybe it's rather I just
Yeah.
follow whatever just is fun for me. But I think in the end,
Yeah.
if it's fun for me, it's probably more likely to be fun for other people. I needed a little bit of discipline to sit down and finish a complete album. Yeah, but I don't know. It's I learned a lot. I don't even know if I'm going to do another album, just because it needs more discipline. And at some point in time, you have to be okay, gonna finish those songs now because I planned them. But I don't know. I'm working on more music at the moment, or I right now I'm not because I'm moving, but have been working and going to continue very soon. But other than that, for me, music production is very chaotic. I have to admit.
That's fair enough.
Chaotic. But I have to say for that, I spent 10 years being super disciplined. right? I would like start a song, finish the song, because I was working for record labels, and everybody's like, okay, we need this. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sit down and do this. Da, 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 da. It was like a machine. Everybody was like, hey, you're a music production machine, Chris. Funny thing is, success came when I flipped that, because I moved back to Germany and I thought, okay, I'm just going to pursue my own career. But I had enough money from the productions that I made. And I came back, and first I was like, okay, I'm just going to play video games. I'm going to play Skyrim and just immerse myself into the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah,
that got boring at some point. But I was just producing only when I felt it, right? When I didn't feel like producing music, I didn't. I just played video games. Or I would go for a walk, which I did a lot. And interestingly, that gave me so much more success. And when you think about it, I mean, probably makes sense. When you have fun making music, probably people will have fun listening to it, rather than when you stress yourself out making music, maybe not so many people are going to enjoy it. So that's kind of my strategy, that it kind of takes me discipline to get back to it. I get back into the old rut of trying to be a music production machine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it takes discipline to say, no, I'm just going to do what feels great. Yeah, that's maybe the biggest challenge, even with producing the album and producing in general. That's the challenge. Just more get into your feelings, more get into what you love, rather than trying to be successful or chase anything.
This is a topic that really interests me, is, like the whole, everyone has different approaches with this. I've always been traditionally on the side of like, having more of a routine and habit with music. And like, I kind of have a semi-consistent time. And obviously there's always flexibility with anything creative, but I have a semi-consistent time where I kind of work on music and stuff like that. But like, yeah, you kind of, the way I like to refer to it is kind of like scheduled chaos. It's kind of like I'm going to allow myself this block of time to kind of just let whatever happen. And sometimes that breaks. Like sometimes I'll have those moments of inspiration where I'm like, for example, for my work, I'll make like a YouTube video for here at EDMProd or something, and then I might be halfway through making the project file for like what I'm showing in the tutorial, and then I have an idea and I like spend the next hour like just like playing around with something randomly that I didn't expect to even do. Like sometimes things happen like that too. So it's definitely like there's benefits to both. But yeah, there's like definitely times where it is good to kind of just let like the boundaries a bit looser, I think, and enjoy it.
I have to say, I also have a schedule, which may sound weird, but I don't force it. So what it might be a really good strategy to talk about. What I found works the best for me, I come back to it again and again. I start it, then I do something else and come back to it, is limiting my music production time, which means I usually work 4 hours on music. Like actual production is 4 hours per day maximum.
Yeah.
So I have 2 sessions, each 2 hours, and I set a timer. And when the timer goes off, I have to stop. Yeah. So in that time, I can do whatever I want. If I don't feel like it, I can, just watch Netflix or play Cyberpunk. But when the timer stops, I could go on watching Netflix or playing Cyberpunk, but I'm not going to make any music. So when I have that, so what happens is I start the timer, I start producing music. Usually I get into the flow pretty well. And usually the timer goes off before I feel anything. I still want to go on, right? So the timer goes and like, I still want to go on. I'm in the process, but I stop, which keeps me craving making more music. So I have the next session, 2 hours, right? And same thing again. So I'm always hungry to make more music, if that makes any sense. Because what does work so well is like making music until I'm totally satisfied, or until like, I can't go anymore. And maybe do another session like that. And then the next day, or you can do it for some time, but at some point I'll be like, I need a break. Right?
Yeah.
But there are some techniques like that I heard from writers. They even they don't finish a sentence. So they start when they stop writing, they start a sentence and they finish it. They stop in the middle So when they come
Yeah,
back,
right.
know where to start, so they get right back into the flow. So this is a little bit of that, and
Wow.
I usually have time set for that. But what I don't do is like forcing myself with finishing
Sure.
songs, or with even with working. Like there's a time frame, and it's usually set. Usually it's right when I stand up. So I stand up at 6:30 and 7 I start. But if I don't feel like it, I don't have to.
Sure. Yeah.
But at
That's
9,
interesting.
it's at 9 I have to stop. Whatever.
Yeah.
When I started 8:30, it's just 30 minutes left.
I also find, like, even if you had a good day, let's say for argument's sake, where it's like, you did, a lot in those 2 hour sessions, and you mostly worked on music. I feel like if, I can't remember where I read this, but like, 3 to 4 hours of like solid, work at like on anything creative, like I feel like not many people would be able to do much more than that
Yes.
if they're like honest with themselves. Like I don't understand people, if I'm honest, who are like, I spent 8 hours a day in the studio. Maybe there's a way that it works for them, but it's like, well, yeah, that's fine to say you spend 8 hours in the studio, but like it's also fine to say I'm not doing stuff all of those 8 hours. Like
Yeah.
you're definitely like checking your phone or watching, Netflix or something in between, because 8 hours of solid work on music is like, that's just I don't see anyone doing that.
No, not
Yeah.
at all. And that's more with people. I usually work alone in the studio, and I think
Yeah.
that's usually more when you have like a couple of people in the studio. And I know that. I mean, honestly, 70% of the time you're talking, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
socializing. You're talking about this. You're talking about that. Where there's nothing wrong about it, but the actual time where you're working on music is probably even less than 4 hours. Even if you have like a 8 hour session. And probably your
Yes.
net time that we work on music is probably 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's different in a collaborative environment, I would agree. Yeah, because it is not, you're not all three, or whoever is in the studio, you're not all sitting there like doing your own thing for 8 hours. It's like, yeah, the environment of maybe one person jumps on and does something, and then you chat for a bit about it, and then someone else does something.
Exactly.
And yeah,
And for me,
it
usually
is a
those two
different
hours,
environment.
those 2 hours, they feel like 20 minutes. It's really, I'm starting, and
Yes.
I completely lose track of like sense of time or anything. It's like timer goes off and like, wait, what? Just
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
really, really deep work, as people call it.
Yes. Yeah, deep work. That's good. That's a good one. Um, awesome, man. Now that's fascinating to hear your process. Yeah, everyone has a different one. There's a great book called Daily Rituals.
Yeah.
I think it's by Mason Curry. That's a good example of just how different people's creative schedules are. Like all processes, like some people, I think one guy, I can't remember who it was, literally goes to like the diner across the road from him and like drinks 4 chocolate milkshakes and then writes like scripts for movies or something. I'm like, wow, good for that guy, like
Yeah.
those kind of things. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
definitely about finding what works for you and capitalizing on that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
what I can
man.
recommend is try working in early morning to everybody. I always thought I
Yes.
was a night person, but I realized I'm actually working in the very early morning, right after you stand up. For me, it's key not to my phone's still on airplane mode. My phone's
Yeah.
on airplane mode until I finish the second session usually. So standing up, have a drink, go into the studio. I just drink water with lemon juice, get into the studio, start because I'm not thinking about anything else really. So the first thing, so it's like it's like your computer. You start it up and you have not like 1,000 tabs open and 100 programs running in the background. It's just that one program and everything's going really fast and smooth.
That's so true. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. The distractions that can come up while you're making music, like, yeah, definitely trying to eliminate those is key for
Yeah.
that creative time, for sure, because they can suck it out of you otherwise. So yeah, man. Awesome. This has been a really good chat, man. I really appreciate all of these things that you're elaborating on. Definitely some great advice that I know a lot of people out there can hold on to.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, of course, man. What is coming up in the next 12 months for the Fat Rat?
I have a project which I cannot talk about yet.
Okay.
But it's going to be out
all
soon.
Good.
It's something, it's something special. I can tell it's something in the NFT space. I haven't done any NFT so far because it didn't really fit to what I'm doing. Because for me, it's more about like doing something where everybody can participate rather than selling something for, $1,500 or $2,000 where just a few people can participate. So I have something there. I have more news about that soon. So this is what I'm working on. Then working on more music, but I don't have any specific plans about the next releases yet.
Nice. Well, we will keep an eye out for that. That sounds exciting. Awesome, man. One last question, and we ask everyone who comes on the podcast this. And it is a bit of a trick question, as you may gather when I ask it. But if you had a time machine, what would be one thing you could go back and change that happened in your music career or life?
I don't know if there would be anything that I would change.
That's the right answer. No, I'm joking. Yeah, fair enough.
No, I don't. I'm sometimes thinking about some things where I wonder how everything else would have turned out, but I'm simply at the perfect, like everything came together perfectly in the end. If it would be early, and I mean, what I thought about sometimes was like, I could have spent more energy at the very beginning finding a great mentor, right? Something that really matters me. But then maybe I never would have become an artist, which turned out to be the perfect thing for me.
Yeah.
So no, it's just everything's just right. Everything's just fine.
No, it's a good thing to realize because I think everything happens, even if it's negative or it's a lesson. I think so. I can say that at least for me, and I know a lot of people. So it's just all about learning from what's happening to you right now and seeing how you can not make that mistake again in the future.
Also, if I actually had a time machine to change something in the past, I would never dare to change anything. Because you never know what else would have, what would be the consequences. You come back and you realize you're a drug addict.
Chaos theory. It's about how you'll create parallel universes.
What I can say about this, for example, it's a lesson that I always remember. My song "The Calling," it's definitely one of the most more successful that I released. It was originally a remix that I did for another pretty big name artist, and it was turned down. And I said, okay, can I release it as a bootleg? It was like, no, we don't want this out at all. And I loved the remix so much, and my wife loved it. I was like, this cannot be real. Why? Right. And then in the end, I was like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna record my own, make it turn into my own song. And it was way more successful than the original song from an actually big artist that I remixed. So you never know what it's good for.
Yeah, it's like unremixing a song. That's a good strategy. If you're ever finding yourself in that situation, it's like, remove the other elements, replace them. It's good.
Yeah, and I always remember that. I always remember that it might be annoying and frustrating at the moment, but maybe it's going to turn to something much better and bigger later on.
Yep, 100%, man. That is awesome. Great advice for everyone out there listening. Well, as I mentioned, this has been a pleasure, Christian. Thank you so much for taking time out of your morning and coming and speaking to us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And where can everybody find you online if they want to check your stuff out, follow you, etc.?
Just search for TheFatRat, just like TheFatRat, just in one word. And then you'll probably just stumble upon my YouTube channel, and you can find everything else there.
Great. Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.